Blink. 2, 3, 4. Do 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 do. Hi and good morning. Yes, it's Friday. TGI. So I got home late last night. I probably won't be home until late tonight. So I thought maybe I'd do this instead of listening to the news before I leave for work. So still haven't been paid yet, goddammit. And was only able to pick up a couple things at the store yesterday, but they look good. First up is something I wouldn't normally buy, but here we are, Catwoman Lonely City. This is by DC's Black Label, Hey Mabel, and it's written and drawn by Cliff Chang, which is why I got it. I was working at the shop last Friday when the order came in. It's all over the place now. When I was working at a shop before the orders came in, the big one delivery of all new product came Wednesday morning, and then that was moved to Tuesday morning a few years ago, and now it's just this shop, which is not uncommon these days, uses a minimum 3 distributors for all their products. So there's a lot. But anyway, uh, my coworker Abel, who was breaking it down, she was like, these Black Label, they're oversized and they're a pain." And then I said, "Oh, which one is it?" And I went, "Oh, can I have one?" So Cliff Chang is probably more well known for having drawn Brian K. Vaughan's Paper Girls, which is a really, I think, probably his best work. Vaughan's best work, anyway. Um, but what I know Cliff Chang from is Human Target from back in the early 2000s when Peter Milligan was writing it for the Vertigo line at DC, which is what Black Label kind of is trying to be now, a little bit. Well, I mean, Vertigo was the mature readers line that DC had in the 90s into the 2000s, and then it kind of petered out, which means it had swearing and light nudity and some sexual, PG-13 R. Well, yeah, eventually started using the F word when the Invisibles came out, but it was the difference between Black Label and Vertigo. The main one is that they use a lot of marquee characters, whereas when Vertigo started, it was kind of a loose amalgam of properties that DC threw to these newer, more experimental writers, most of them out of the UK. So characters like Swamp Thing and Sandman, who had been in DC lore for a while. Well, Swamp Thing wasn't that old when Alan Moore took it over, but Sandman had been a Golden Age character that Neil Gaiman totally revamped. Doom Patrol was a Silver Age team that Grant Morrison revamped, and so on and so on. And the big names, Superman's, your Batman's, is very, very, very. I don't think there were any Vertigo books with those characters. They might make a cameo of some kind, but now these Black Label books are largely there's nothing's off limits. They'll do like Hellblazer, stuff like that. And I mean, Catwoman's not. Well, I guess she's kind of. And I believe the premise behind this is kind of an old lady Catwoman, like Selena Kyle is getting up there in years, and has retired, but she comes out of retirement. I don't think I've ever read anything that Cliff Chang has written. I've read I have a lot of books that he's drawn, but not written. So we'll see how that goes. But either way, it'll be pretty to look at. And then, of course, the third in the Reckless series, Destroy All Monsters, which came out yesterday by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. There's not really much more I could say about this that I haven't already said with the first two. This one, I believe, takes place in 1988. So it's, the last one was 81 and the first one was like 70. I think there's going to be, well, in fact, I think they're just going to keep going until they run out. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure there's a fourth one in the hopper already. Um, but apparently they've been selling very well, which makes sense. I mean, well, I yes and no. I mean, I think it's the best stuff they've done in a very long time. But that's not to say that everything else that they've done over the course of their career hasn't been really, really good. So yeah, you have Ethan Reckless here, Private Eye, sort of an equalizer type almost. He lives in a movie theater. It's very noir. It's very good, and I like it. But there's not much going on this morning. But nothing to do when you're locked in a vacancy. All right. So first up, Immortal Hulk number 50. This was as good as I had expected. Here's the thing, though, that I'd kept forgetting to say every time I would bring up the Immortal Hulk and how different it was from every other iteration of the Incredible Hulk. The one thing, the thing to me anyway, that is the common thread between every iteration of the Hulk, especially the ones that he focuses on. And here is, and this has been a theme of the book again since its inception, I would say, but Immortal Hulk really brought to it. There's a lot of this is a horror book, and a lot of this book takes place in hell, where all of the Hulks, all the different versions of the Hulk, are sort of trapped throughout most of the run, including Bruce Banner. And it dawned on me, not for the first time, but reading the book again, that the overarching theme of this book, and probably of the Hulk in general, is that being angry all the time is a living hell. And that's pretty, that hits pretty close to home for me. The Hulk has long been one of my favorite characters because I could relate to that anger and the sort of destruction, self or otherwise, that so very often is part and parcel of that anger. So there's nothing that Bruce Banner or the Hulk can do that their rage doesn't destroy. And that remains evergreen. And so, yeah, it was, and it's not for, again, not for the first time, but I definitely cried reading this comic book, which I know how that sounds. And I'm too depressed to care at this point. And kind of following on that, I did want to talk about Fantastic Four. This is issue 36. I think I'm still behind. I'm like a month behind. Who gives a shit? But yeah, so here, this is something that I've not seen done, and I'm hard pressed to think of if I've ever seen it done. But the Human Torch is finally sort of, how do I want to phrase this? The Human Torch of the Fantastic Four has always been the lighthearted one, the rock star of the group, if you will. Fantastic one of the things that set the Fantastic Four apart from most superheroes is that they had no secret identities. Their identities were public. They considered themselves adventurers in the name of science, in the name of humanity. So even though obviously they have great and powerful enemies, they don't hide from them. And they're celebrities in the Marvel universe, right? And so Johnny Storm, since he's the youngest and he's kind of a pretty boy, hot shot, and he was like that before he was the Human Torch. That's how his character has always been. There's definitely have been times where he has to step up and really, with the heroics, and really make a grand sacrifice. They killed him off a few years ago, in fact, when Jonathan Hickman was writing the book. They were fighting a nihilist in the negative zone. again. And Johnny made the ultimate sacrifice to save the rest of the team. And then obviously he came back because it's comics. So, but currently in, and it's, I mean, it's always like, oh, hooray. This, that's a fun character to root for, the kind of selfish guy that, but, when the chips are down, really, he's very cocky and confident, but when it comes down to it, you can count on him. Lately, we've been kind of getting the flip of this a little bit, and I'm enjoying it because I don't think it's ever been done, and I would love for somebody to prove me wrong. So, sort of thumbnail it. Um, the Human Torch recently became soul bound with a character named Sky, who was who lived on a distant planet that the FF visited, and in their culture, her and Johnny became soul bound, like they just were soulmates. And so this is very strange to John, who is like rather the fuckboy in the parlance of our time. But he was trying to make it work. Meanwhile, Doctor Doom has a herald, I guess you would call her, a young woman that he's training his his protege, and her name is Victorious. I can't remember her real name. She's very very loyal to Doom, and very, she worships the ground he walks on, etc., etc. She serves at the pleasure of the Emperor, sort of a thing. And so Doom had made her his fiance. And it was like, it's been weird, like, ever since the last Doom solo series. It does seem like Doctor Doom has been kind of softening a little, at least in the pages of Fantastic Four. And not softening, but definitely being a little more diplomatic. He invited the Fantastic Four to the wedding, for example. And he asked Reed Richards to be his best man. Which, I mean, I think in the way, I think it was in the story, but it was a thing of like, you're my greatest enemy and the only person I respect. So Reed and Sue were like, "Oh, let's definitely go. This would be a great way to sort of, maybe we could start to work with Doom and Latveria, and instead of fighting them all the time." But then at the altar, Victorious reveals to Doom that she and Johnny Storm had in fact slept together. Whoopsie doodle. So not only was Johnny's wife upset about that, and has since, um, but obviously Doom was furious, and so he hits Johnny with a spell, I believe, of some sort, or maybe more cosmic radiation. But now Johnny can't turn his flames off. And he's stuck like this, so they have to take him back to and he's supernova. He's not like just normal Human Torch. He was on the streets of New York for a minute, and he started blinding people. So it's like a real situation here, and it's just, I gotta say, it's really refreshing seeing this. And this could be definitely is me projecting as an old fart, but it's nice seeing the snot nose punk who always kind of is like thumbing his nose at everybody else, kind of get his comeuppance. Especially because the Thing is his real shoulder to cry on, and the Thing is my favorite character because I relate to a guy who has a very poor self image and is kind of a little rough around the edges. But he's been very consoling to Johnny Storm and during this, and of course, this is what I'm talking about with Slott. And I've always liked, even though I didn't read his Amazing Spider-Man run, which is his most famous thing, I've always thought Dan Slott was a great writer, especially for superhero comics. And so yeah, he's got Johnny Storm, and he's complaining incessantly through this issue. I'm a freak, and nobody. And it's like, before even Ben said something in the book, I was like, dude, that's the Thing that you're talking to. You know the Thing. You know the guy that you've been playing incessant practical jokes on for the last 60 years, and the guy who, of the four of you, has never been able to fit into normal society, and while the rest of you are celebrities because you're normal looking and you have these incredible powers, the Thing is over here in the corner is being a pile of rocks, but that's that's kind of the best part about it is that Ben doesn't rub it in his face. He doesn't. Eventually, he does say something like, "Hey, if anybody knows what you're going through, it's me. Right? I'm a freak. Also, I can't go outside without at minimum making people. And I mean, Johnny's gonna melt people, but it's the same sort of thing where he has to be hidden away. So I just wanted to talk about that. I've been really depressed lately, and this sort of thing makes me feel better. Okay, anger is a living